This is a brief introduction to the Forrest Manufacturing Model 214 fitting saw. This is a specialized machine meant for my insulation fabrication customers. This is the smallest machine we sell, but it's very much a specialized tool. It is meant for customers working with piping insulation. Say you're working with insulation half rounds. You need to make mitered elbows, T's, Y's, or you make larger shapes such as parts to cover valve bodies or other more complicated parts. This is the first machine you get. It covers, well, everybody always asks me how big a pipe covering can you cut. There's a giant, it depends on what you're doing. You get something like, I think it's 24 inches of vertical working blade length, actually 21 inches working blade length between the table surface and this upper blade guide when it's fully raised. So in theory, you could cut something 24 inches tall. But you're making mitered elbows, you have to deal with the heel length. The heel length is going to have to go in what we call this horizontal throat area here from the blade to the saw's vertical column. This is 13 inches and a little bit. And so if your heel length is more than 13 inches, it's not gonna fit. Also, if you're wanting to make T's or Y's, we have a special fitting we call the flipper bar. We have another video demonstrating how it's actually used, but we have the flipper bar meant to make it fast and easy to make those T's and Y's. But again, you can't actually work on a full width part. You can work with a pretty small part, maybe up to 6-8 inches, 10 inches maybe, but it depends on the miter back length, the through length of the T. Are you doing a 2-piece T or a 3-piece T? Here's a giant, it depends. You just have to know what you're cutting and know that you have a vertical working blade length of 21 inches, horizontal through at 13 inches. More about the saw itself. This is a high-speed bandsaw. Uses a pair of 14-inch diameter wheels. We run a blade speed, fixed blade speed on this machine of 3,000 feet per minute. The blade drive motor. The blade drive motor is a 1 horsepower single phase motor. It can run on either 230 volt or 115 volt. But if you run it on 115 volt, please ask me first. Basically, you need to use a really big wire. I think it pulls something like 13, 14 amps, full load amps, steady state, but the inrush current is much bigger than that, and you need to run basically big wire if you want to run 15 volts on this machine. You can do it, just ask me to make sure you're using the right wire. This is a traveling table machine. The idea being, you put your workpiece on the table and you move the table to make the cut. It means you get a nice straight cut. You're relying on the table tracking to give you that, and you're keeping your fingers away from the blade while you're making the cut. Now you may be using what we call the miter bar over here. Again, I have a specific video showing use of the miter bar feature on this machine, but basically it's a angle setting fixture to set the angle for your mitered elbows. But you can again have the workpiece here, work the machine from this side, and not have to have your hands anywhere near the blade while making the cut. So we have a miter bar for setting the angle. I don't have it on right now. Machine comes with what we call a T-square. It sits right here. Allows you to set the back length for the mitered elbow segment. We have this part we call the flipper bar for making T's and Y's. But there's also a type of part you don't see as much anymore called a mitered lag, where you might need to make a cut instead of vertical at an angle. This machine includes the ability to tilt the saw head. Not much. It'll tilt from vertical to 22.5 degrees, I'll illustrate. Also, when you tilt the head, you have to lock the table into position. The pivot point for the head is underneath the table down here. So when you tilt it, the blade does what I call walking over. To accommodate that, we have a notch in the table skin here. You move the table till the notch is centered on the blade. And then back here where, sorry, you can't see it, I have a thumb screw. You can push the thumb screw into a matching hole on the table. Now the table won't move. So when you're doing this, you are sliding the workpiece across the table. Not the best way, but it does work. Now, to tilt the saw head, we have over here a threaded rod with a traveling nut. So generally the way to do this, spin it up, let the head come down, measure your angle. And it'll tilt over like this all the way to 22.5 degrees. Ready to put it back to vertical. Raise saw head. And put it back. I can eyeball, that's not quite vertical and it bothers me. Motor starter. So like I said, single horsepower, single phase motor, runs off a magnetic motor starter. You have a choice. The ideal way to do this is installing it in a permanent location, is to have a run conductor and hard conduit to a fuse disconnect over on the wall someplace within line of sight. Follow your local codes, please. What a lot of my customers do, they will take these to job sites and they just want to plug it in with a cord. So like what we've done here, use a cord with a plug at the end, and according to some local codes, the plug counts as a disconnect. So you can just plug it into the wall, 115 or 230 preferred again, but plug it in the wall, that's your disconnect. That's how a lot of my customers do it. That's the basics here. Motor starter includes magnetic motor starter with overload. If the machine is running and you lose power, the machine will stop. Because this is a magnetic motor starter, when the power comes back on, the machine will not start back up. You have to come back and push the green go button again. That's the basics. If you have any questions, like to discuss your need for a machine to make insulation shapes or other bandsaw applications, please feel free to call or email us at Forrest Manufacturing. Thank you for your time.